And we bees live, ladies and gentlemen. This is a movie madness with Arknolia and the Doctor, Arknolia Strokabine and Dr. Earl W. Brown here. This is episode 6 of Movie Madness, our weekly series here on the various movies here, good, bad, ugly, whichever there. And tonight we're going to be taking a look at a very ugly movie there. And when I speak of ugly, I speak of how it did in the box office, in revenue, and in everything else, critics, reviews, everything. Last Monday we spoke about a disaster of a movie known as Battlefield Earth. We touched upon it, a lot of the issues that were wrong with it. One of them, of course, the acting, the screenwriting, and everything else. You know, John Travolta talking like Vinnie Barbarino, despite looking like a cyber goth Rob Zombie. And this week we're going to take a look at probably the biggest bombs of all from 1980. And this is about 20 years before Battlefield Earth. I guess you could probably say it was the massive Battlefield Earth from 1980, I guess you would say. We're speaking of a movie which controversy and the story behind the scenes there even inspired a book, of all things. We're talking about the 1980 movie Heaven's Gate. It was, of course, a epic Western movie directed or written by Michael Cimino. It starred Chris Christopherson, Christopher Walken, Jeff Bridges, the late John Hurt, Jeffrey Lewis, David Mansfield. It had Mickey Rourke and Nicholas Woodinson and William Dafoe. But
There was some star power here, but it just didn't work out.
no, he been able to feature that actress. Like her name was Isabel Huppert. I guess what it was, and I guess this Cimino, I guess, was well recognized for his 1979 movie The Deer Hunter, which starred Robert De Niro. It was shot location in Montana and Idaho. The production faced numerous setbacks, including the cost overruns, significant retakes, bad press, which included allegations of animal abuse on set, and rumors about Cimino's alleged authority directorial style. Now, he had an expensive and ambitious vision for the film, pushing the movie to be nearly 4 times over its planned budget. Now, the movie premiered in November of 1980. The film received a significant critical backlash, prompting the company who will distribute it, United Artists, to pull it from theaters. In April of 1981, a recut version was released, though it remained a financial failure, earning only, get this, 3.5 million in the box office, which was diddly shit compared to the budget it cost to make the movie, which was actually 44 million. And the original cut was basically condemned it as one of the worst movies ever made. The failure at the box office had major financial repercussions for United Artists, which apparently, because of this movie flopping, it caused the movie company to go bankrupt. And according to some film historians, the the financial failure of this movie resulted in the demise of the director driven film production in the American film industry, steering back towards greater studio control of films. So after this, the studio decided, hey, we need to get control of this because the last time we left it up to the director, it just completely went,
Yeah, and this film was also entirely too long.
yeah. Yeah, they had to shorten it. I guess the artists had to recut the movie and make it a little bit shorter than it was. But from what I understand, it was about, what was it, about over 2 hours, I guess?
Actually, it was over 3 hours.
Wow, that's something there. Usually what they do is that they take a little break before they start the second half of the movie. I know they did that with Brian De Palma's Scarface with Al Pacino.
Yeah, an intermission is not uncommon.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, in the decades since its movie's release, greater assessment of the movie has become more favorable. Um, our best way to say the 1980 re-edit has been characterized as one of the greatest injustice in cinematic history. While re-edits later of the movie received a lot more critical acclaim. Now, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, ranked in the movie number 98th on its list of 100 greatest American films of all time. But then again, people might say, well, that's an odd one. But then again, England probably sees something in the movie that we don't know. So who knows?
Yeah, ironically, I was reading through the plot of this thing and it sounded like a reasonably decent plot. I don't know why it didn't pan out.
I do not know myself. I probably was, well, it's a kind of a long story here. I guess what it is about, I'm going to try and keep this simple as I could. Two young men, Billy Irving and Jim Averill, both graduate from Harvard College. The Reverend Doctor speaks to the two on the association of the what is called the cultivated mind of the uncivilized, and the importance of education. Now,
Right.
Irving, brilliant but obviously intoxicated, follows this with his opposing irrelevant views. The celebration is then held in which the male students serenade the women that are around there, including one of the girlfriends of the two guys. Now, 20 years later, Averill is passing through the booming town of Casper, Wyoming, on his way north to Johnston County, where he is now a marshal. Poor immigrants from Europe, new to the region, are in conflict with these wealthy established cattle barons known as the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. The newcomers sometimes steal their cattle for food. So Nate Champion, a friend of Averill and an enforcer of the stockmen, kills a settler for suspected rustling and stops another from stealing a cow. At a board meeting, the head of the association, Frank Canton, tells his members that a drunk Irving plans to kill 125 settlers, with their names included, as thieves and anarchists. Irving leaves the meeting, encounters Averill, and tells him of the association's plans. As Averill leaves, he exchanges bitter words with Canton. Canton and Averill have an argument, and Canton is now knocked to the floor. And later that night, Canton recruits men to kill the named settlers. Ellen Watson, a Johnson County Bordereau madam from Quebec, Montreal, from Quebec, Canada, who accepts, get this, stolen cattle as payment for use of her prostitutes. That's a new one. I know, that's why I said it when I was reading this. She is infatuated with both Champion and Averill. Averill and Watson stake in a crowd, then dancing alone. Then, in an enormous roller skating rink titled Heaven's Gate. A roller skate? Oh yeah, I think roller skates was actually invented around that time, if I'm correct.
I don't know that for sure, but who knows? Movies take a lot of liberties.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true there. I should probably look it up when I'm done with the story here. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. Now, now this once again, the roller skating rink is called Heaven's Gate, which has been built by a local fucking hell, built by a local named John L. Bridges. Averill receives a copy of the association's death list from a baseball playing U.S. Army captain, and later reads the names aloud to the settlers, who are thrown into terrified turmoil. Scully, a station manager and friend of Everell's, sees the train with Canton's posse heading northward, rides off to warn the settlers that murder is about to be committed. Later, a group of men come to Watson's Bodero and rape her. Everell shoots and kills all but one of them. Champion realizes that his landowner bosses seek to eliminate Watson, goes to Canton's cab and shoots the remaining rapist, but then refuses to participate in the slaughter. Yeah. Now, Canton and his head and his men encounter. Excuse me, I'm fumbling my words. I've been busy at work all day, so I'm still on the tire side. And his Canton and his men encounter one of Champion's friends, leaving the camp in with Champion and his friend Nick inside, and a gunfight starts. Attempting to save Champion, Watson arrives in her wagon and shoots one of the hired guns before escaping on horseback. Nick is killed before Canton's eyes, going towards Canton's men, pushing a burning cart towards the cabin, setting it on fire. Champion writes a last letter to Ella. Champion emerges from the burning cabin, shooting at one of Canton's men, but is killed by a hail of bullets. Watson warns the settlers of Canton's approach to another huge chaotic gathering at the Heaven's Gate roller rink. The settlers decide to counterattack. Bridges leads the attack on Canton's gang. When the hired invaders now surrounded, both sides suffer casualties, including a drunken, poetic Irving, as Canton leaves to bring help. Watson and Everett return to Champion's charred and smoking cabin and discover his corpse, along with a handwritten letter documenting his last minutes alive. Now, the next day, Everett reluctantly joins the immigrant settlers with their cobbed together siege machines and explosive charges in attack against Canton's men and make their makeshift fortifications. Again, there are heavy casualties on both sides before the U.S. Army, with Canton in the lead, arrives to stop the fighting and save the remaining mercenaries. Later at Watson's cabin, Bridges, Watson, and Everett prepare to leave for good, but they are ambushed by Canton and two others. Bridges and Everett shoot and kill Canton as one of his men, but both Bridges and Watson are both killed within the gunfire. A grief-stricken Everett holds Watson's body in his arms. In 1903, a decade later, a well-dressed, beardless, but older-looking Everett walks the deck of his yacht off Newport, Rhode Island. He goes below where an attractive middle-aged woman is sleeping downstairs. The woman, Everett's old Harvard girlfriend, now his wife, proximally, awakens and asks for a cigarette. Suddenly he complies, lights it, and returns to the deck. And that was it.
Yeah, and again, what does that have to do with the rest of the movie? But okay.
I don't know. It's about one of those struggles. I guess it's about, sticking up for immigrants, I guess it would say there.
No, I'm wondering that last scene, what did that have to do with the rest of the movie?
I have no damn clue. I have no clue. I've yet to see the movie myself, and from what I keep hearing throughout the decades, best not to.
Either that or watch it for free for sure.
Hey, maybe, but who knows? We have yet to see it on network television, let alone cable television. So,
True.
yeah, it's true. But then again, if it doesn't even make there, that tells you how real bad this shit ton of a movie is. Now, the basic plot of the movie were inspired by that 1892 Johnson County War in the state of Wyoming. The cattlemen wholesalers conflict. which also served as the background for Shane and the Virginian, to a well-known a Western movie and a Western TV series. Most of the film's principal characters bear the names of actual key figures in the war, but the events portrayed in the movie bear little resemblance to actual historic events. While homesteaders did begin to settle northern Wyoming in the 1890s, claiming land under the newly enacted Homestead Acts, there were no hordes of starving European immigrants killing rich men's cattle to feed their families, as depicted in the movie. Nate Champion, who was portrayed as a murderer and enforcer by the stockmen, was actually a popular small rancher in the County area. He was nicknamed King of the Rustlers by the stockmen because he resisted their tactic of claiming an unbranded young cattle as their own. Now, Jim Everell was another homesteader who lived about 100 miles, about 160 kilometers southwest of Johnson County. 2 years before the invasion began, him and his common law wife, Ella Watson, are murdered by stockmen who falsely accuse Watson of exchanging sexual favors for stolen cattle. There was no evidence that Watson was actual madam, as portrayed in the movie, nor that Watson and Averell ever knew Nate Champion.
Well, essentially, they just used people's names and put them on characters they invented.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, the filming, now according to this, the sixth day of the filming of the project, according to legend, was already 5 days behind schedule. As an examples of Cimino's fanatical attention to detail, a street built to his specifications had to be torn down and rebuilt because it reportedly didn't look right. The street in question needed to be 6 feet wider. The set construction boss said it would be cheaper to tear down one side and move it back 6 feet. But Cimino, the so-called perfectionist that he is supposed to be, insisted that both sides be dismantled and moved back 3 feet, then reassembled. An entire tree was cut down, moved in pieces, and relocated to the courtyard where the Harvard 1870 graduation scene was shot. Cimino had an integ- had a what's this word here? Cinnamon Ingold. Irrigation system built under the land where the major battlefield scene would unfold, so that would remain green in contrast to the red color. Now, more than 1.3 million feet of footage was shot, costing the studio approximately $200,000 per day in salary, locations, and acting fees. Privately, it was joked that Cimino wanted to surpass the mark that Francis Ford Coppola did, shooting 1 million feet of footage for his movie Apocalypse Now, which we know came out a year earlier. The obsessive behavior of Michael Cimino earned him the name the Ayatollah. Apparently, this guy was like a fascist in a lot of ways. Production fell behind schedule as rumors spread of Cimino's demanding up to about 50 takes of individual scenes, delaying filming until a cloud that he liked rolled onto the frame. As a result of the
Wow.
delays, several musicians originally brought to Montana to work on the film only 3 weeks ended up stranded, waiting to be called for shoots to materialize, and simply waited. The experience, as the Associated Press put it, was stunningly boring and a ruckus good time full of jam sessions, strange adventures, and curiosity while actual shooting. The jam sessions between these musicians served as the beginning of numerous musical collaborations between both Jeff Bridges and Chris Christopherson. Remember, Chris Christopherson is a musician himself. He worked with Johnny Cash. He wrote Me and Bobby McGee for Janis Joplin. Now, as the productions went forward, United Artists seriously considered firing Cimino and replacing him with a different director, reportedly a guy named Norman Jewison. In the book Final Cut, Stephen Bach simply put it was apparently David Lean who was suggested by United Artists. Now, actor John Hurt, who appeared in the movie as we mentioned, reportedly spent so long waiting around for the production for something to do that he actually went off and made The Elephant Man, a movie directed by, if I remember, David Lynch, which came out the same year. And came back to shoot more scenes for the Heaven's Gate movie. It finished shooting in the 1980, having costed about $30 million, and reportedly some post-production, Cimino changed the lock of the studio's editing room, prohibiting executives from seeing the movie until he completed his final cut. Though the Cimino disputed the story, working with the Oscar director editing William H. Reynolds, Cimino worked doggedly over his project. As one person involved noted, Michael didn't want respect. He wanted all. AEAWE, I guess.
Right.
The image was
Right.
that the magic man was in his workshop working his magic, and we should just leave him alone and let him finish. Now, I'll let you take over. I need to regroup for a second there.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
basically, the movie was a box office failure, and as was mentioned, it only drew 3.5 million compared to a cost of 44 million,
Yeah.
and the critics basically hated it,
They did,
and
yeah.
for the most part. And
Believe it or not, here's something else. This would, if it would have came out as originally planned, it would have, the movie alone would have been, they would have had to take an intermission because it reportedly landed over 5 hours. 5 hours and 25 minutes.
yeah, and he cut that down to 3 hours and plus.
Yeah. Which Cimino said was about 15 minutes longer than the final cut would have been. Now, the executives at the United Artists flatly refused to release the film at that length and once again contemplated firing Cimino. Meanwhile, Cimino himself promised that he would re-edit the movie and spent the entire summer and fall of 1980 doing so, finally paring it down to its original premiere length of 3 hours and 39 minutes. The original wide release opening on Christmas Day of 1979 had come and gone. So United Artists and Cimino finally set a date in, no- in November of 1980. And following a brief theatrical release during that month and that year, during which the movie was poorly received by critics, United Artists decided to pull the movie from its theaters and really released it the following year in April in a more truncated cut. Now, despite the efforts to capitalize on the film with a re-release, it was a significant financial failure, earning, as reported, $3.5 million domestically against the $44 million budget that the movie had cost. The film is notable for being one of the biggest box office bombs of all time.
Right.
Yeah, and now in the same year, November 1980, the movie premiered at the Cinema One Theater in New York. The audience was so subdued that Cimino was said to have asked why nobody was drinking the champagne, to which his publicist told him, because they hate the movie, Michael. They hate it. And that the initial critical reception to the movie was absolutely negative. Vincent Canby from the New York Times panned it, calling it something quite rare in movies these days, an unqualified disaster, comparing it to a quote unquote forced 4 hour training tour of one's own living room. Now, Canby went on to further by stating the movie fails so completely that you might suspect Mr. Seymour sold his soul to the devil to obtain the success of the deer hunter, and the devil just came around to collect, or more like the devil wanted his wanted a refund.
Right.
Yeah, and after a 1 week run, Cimino and United Artists pulled the movie from further releases, postponing a worldwide release. Now, in April 1981, the film opened to 810 theaters in a director's cut version, 2 hours and 29 minutes, that Cimino had recut for the third time. Re- Reviewing the shorter cut in the Chicago Sun-Times, Roger Ebert criticized the film's formal choices and the narrative and its incredibilities, concluding that the film was the most scandalous cinematic waste I have ever seen. And remember, I've even seen a movie called Paint Your Wagon. That's one of the words from Roger Ebert himself. He
Right.
also called the film one of the most ugliest films he had ever seen. Kevin Thomas of the LA Times issued a dissecting opinion that when he reviewed the shortened version, becoming one of the few American champions and calling it a true screen epic, while stating that to get decades in a critic, he had never felt so alone. So basically, when he had a different opinion here, and because of that, he was only one rooting for this flick, I guess.
Yeah. That's that pretty much would describe it.
Now, in 1999, Time magazine placed the movie on its list of the 100 worst ideas in the 20th century. And in The Guardian in 2008, Joe Queenman declared that the movie was the worst movie made up to that time, saying, quote unquote, this is a movie that destroyed the director's career. Remember, we haven't heard from this guy since
Right.
that movie. He said, continued, this is a movie that lost so much money, it actually literally drove a major American movie studio out of business. This is a movie about Harvard educated gunslingers who face off against Eastern European sod busters in the epic struggle for the soul of America. This is a movie that stars Isabel Hubbard as a shotgun loafing cowgirl.
Toting. Yeah.
Toting girl, my bad. This is a movie in which Jeff Bridges pukes while mounted on roller skates. This is a movie that has 5 minutes on uninterrupted fiddle playing by a fiddler who is mounted on roller skates. This is a movie that defies belief. And
Yeah, I can just imagine that scene.
I know, let alone watching, I know. That is an absolute trip. Now, The Verge, I don't know if it's a magazine or a web page, said that based on 30 years of critical assessment, Heaven's Gate stands as one of the worst movies of all time. And that is not exaggeration.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that being worse than Plan 9, but I suppose it was.
Or worse, well, it can be, or worse than Battlefield Earth.
Right.
Yeah. Now, here's something that really came about when I was digging into the deep into this film here. There were accusations of animal abuse during the shooting of this movie. Now, those accusations marred the movie just as well. One assertion is that was that live horses were bled from the neck without giving them painkillers so that
Mm.
their blood could be collected and smeared upon the actors during a scene. Whoa. That is a trip. Apparently they didn't want to use fake blood, so they actually had to use actual horse's blood. Now, the American Humane Association asserted that 4 horses were killed and many more were injured during one battle scene. It was claimed that one of the horses was actually blown up by dynamite, and the
Oh,
footage appears in the final cut of the movie. Now, the AHA was barred from monitoring the animal action on the set. According to the HAA, the owner of an abused horse filed a lawsuit against the director, the producers, Partisan Productions, and Horse Wrangler. The owner cried wrongful injury and breach of contract and willingly depriving her Arabian, what is it called, gelding, I guess it is, Gelding, of proper care, and the suit cited the severe physical and behavioral trauma of the disfigurement of the horse. That course was settled out of court. Now, there were also actual accusations of actual cockfights, 2 roosters going at one another, decapitated chickens, a group of cows disemboweled to provide fake intestines for the actors. Now, the outcry prompted the Screen Actors Guild and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers to contractually authorize the AHA to monitor all use of animals during filmed media, whether it's a music video or a movie or a TV series. Now, the film is also on the AHA's list of unacceptable films. No surprise there. Protesting the film by distributing an international press release detailing the assertions of animal cruelty and asking people to boycott it. The HAA organized picket lines outside movie theaters in Hollywood, while the local humane services did the same thing for the U.S. Although the movie itself was not the first film to have animals killed during its production, it is believed that the film was now largely responsible for sparking a new common use during television shows and movie making. To quote, no animals were harmed during the filming of this motion picture. And more rigorous supervision of animal acts by the AHA, which has been inspecting film production since the 1940s. All available versions of this movie released in the UK have mandated the cuts to the animal cruelty.
which actually makes sense.
Yeah. Now, a question I asked earlier: couldn't they use fake blood instead of actual horse blood for this movie?
You would have thought so, but apparently not.
I mean, like, come on, man! I swear, that's like an actor needs to look like bloody gored up after being in a fist fight there. But instead of using fake blood or some sort of ketchup or whichever, they decide to actually kill someone to wipe some of his blood with a damp cloth and smear it on the actor. Makes no sense on why they did that. I don't know.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it didn't. It's just, and plus, it just, oh gosh, it just makes no sense. Makes no crap. Man.
Yeah, That totally is a strange story.
It is, it's just makes, this and the thing is, when you know a movie was that bad, when you hear about there was a book detailing all the things that were going on behind this movie. Now, people would probably assume there was a lot of beef between some actors, executives, movie studios, and such, but apparently there was not much of that. As I'm reading all the information here, now, notwithstanding the 5 hour work print cut shown to executives in June of 1980. Cimino had rushed through post production and editing in order to meet his contractual requirements to a United Artists and to qualify for the 1980 Academy Awards.
Uh,
The,
like that was going to happen.
yeah, right. Apparently, I guess Cimino had this idea that he wanted to make this movie big as hell, like he did with his last movie, The Deer Hunter, with Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Sadly, that didn't work out. Jeez. Now, after the aborted 1 week premiere in New York City, Cimino and United Artists pulled the movie from the theaters. Now, Cimino wrote an open letter to the studio, which was printed in several trade papers, blaming unrealistic deadline pressures for the failure of the movie. So, man, this guy, Michael Cimino, he was really pushing to make this movie bigger than the Deer Hunter, and it sadly turned out vice versa.
Yeah.
So he had to try whatever he can to get this movie over, I guess. But sadly, all of it did not work. No,
No.
you know. Got any other information on this movie you want to share with me?
Not really, other than the 219-minute version that was cut to 149.
Yeah.
There's a list of the scenes that were cut, and essentially, I'm reading these and going, okay, the rest of the movie was better than this. Essentially, they cut things like Irvine's speech at the Harvard graduation.
Yep, I got the list right now. The co-ed circle dancing immediately following graduation. Averill beating up the brute enforcer who beats up the immigrant in front of his wife and children. And Averill passing the beaten man's widow in the cart in the carriage, asking her how she's doing. And the spitting fight between the two immigrant landowners in the cockfighting scene. The entire roller skating dance scene there. A shot of female immigrants carrying a load up to the hill. And Nate Champion, shooting the stock grower that insults Ella Watson. And also the scene where Ella Watson first leads Champion to return to Averill. The introductory part into the scene where Averill reads the names of the deathless. And the edited version starts with John Bridges bringing the gun in the air to fire, to restore order. One of those things we've seen many times. There are order in the court, and
Yeah.
it was reportedly done by a few judges a few times there. I know there was a scene just like that in the movie And Justice for All with Al Pacino there. Averill, Averill, reaping to Bridges that he hates getting old while looking at the old photo of himself and his girlfriend. The immigrants being informed that Averill quit his post, and Watson warning them of the stock growers arriving. The last or so minutes of the second battle scene there, including the footage of the character crushed underneath the wagon and the woman carrying him in mercy, plus the same woman herself, after the battle, and Bridges and Averill surveying the carnage, any reference to women on the boat, presumably Alvaro's girlfriend or wife toward the end of the movie there. Now, in the 2005, MGM decided released the movie to selected theaters in the United States and Europe. The 219-minute cut was reassembled by MGM activist John Kirk, who reported that large portions of the original negative had been discarded, making this an all-new radical season to whatever using whatever alternative sources that could be found. And the restored print was let's see here, screened in Paris, France, and presented to a sold-out audience in a New York Museum of Modern Art. A live production by Isabel Rupert, or excuse me, what's her name?
Yeah,
Huppert.
Huppert. Right.
Huppert. Yes, I keep getting words mixed up. Because the project was commissioned by then MGM executive Bingham Bear, or is it Ray Bingham? That sounds a lot more cooler there. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I know. What kind of a name is that? Sounds like a kid's cartoon when you think about it. Now, Ray, who was ousted shortly afterward, the project, the budget for the project was cut, and a planned wider release under a DVD never materialized, and probably never will.
Most likely that's true.
Yeah. The digitally restored director's cut was released anew again in the year 2012. It is about 260 minutes long, and it premiered at the Venice Film Festival as part of the Venice Classics series. Now, what's this place called? The
Criterion.
Criterion Collection, thank you, released the restored version on Blu-ray disc and DVD in November of 2012. This new director's cut was personally supervised by Michael Cimino himself and Joanne Carell. Cimino explains in the special effects portion of the DVD that this is his preferred version of the movie, but he feels as if to the complete version he intended to make.
Oh, good for you.
Yep. Good for what? Me?
Him,
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of
I
funny.
guess.
I guess if you want to say, well, he ain't directing right now. I guess it is. No doubt about that.
No,
Shit. I know.
not many accolades there.
Not like no. That's all I can really say here. And shout out to JB Sports Radio in the chat here. He says better talk about Die Hard. You know we should. We should sometime soon. And we shall probably talk about the new Die Hard battery commercial, which stars Bruce Willis as the main Die Hard character. He plays John. What's his face, sir? What's his name?
I don't remember the name of that character.
Oh, I just remember it's John there. So, I can really say is, what do you think? What was going through Cimino's head when he was making this movie? I mean,
Well, it was pretty much talked about where he was trying to make a masterpiece, I guess you'd call it.
yeah.
He wanted to be remembered as the guy.
So he's trying to boost up his reputation there. He's trying to make himself like the ultra director, trying to make himself the new Steven Spielberg or the new George Lucas, or possibly the new Tyler Perry or the new Francis Ford Coppola. I guess that's what
Yeah.
he was trying to go against. He was trying to make himself that visionary of a director, trying to make
Right.
himself the next Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, and miserably failed.
Yeah, it's just, I wonder, when a movie flops, Do the actors and the production crew get paid a lot or no? I know they get a salary. I guess what's called an advancement from the movie studios.
Generally, they get paid to do the movie, and some of them get residuals. But in this particular film, if they had residuals, they probably didn't get anything.
That's true there as well. Gosh, that is a triple movie. Well, what the point now? If it's to say that at least one actor we will later see that would come of age throughout the couple of years. Sam Waterston would later become a star. He would star in the 1987 movie The Killing Fields. There, he would
Right.
also star as attorney or excuse me, ADA Jack McCoy in the Law and Order series there, and throughout the whole 1990s.
Yeah, I'd say he did okay.
Yeah, so he was, of course, Chris Christopherson, carried on with his movie and musical career. He would later starred with a couple movies like I think it was called Flashpoint with Treat Williams, I guess, as his co-star there. I
Yeah,
guess,
and there was another one. I can't remember the name of it.
um, I'm trying to remember. I think it was a vampire movie. I think it was, may have had something to do. I think it was it the first Blood Rain or one of the Underworld movies there? Hmm.
I I don't remember that. No.
I remember it had something to do with that particular genre, but it had to be one of those two movies there. Now,
Yeah.
Isabel Rupert, we haven't heard from her. That's the only first time I heard of her name. I guess she was hoping to get into just a star quality herself, but sadly, nobody likes to see a winning actress in a loser film.
Right.
Yeah, so like I said, this is the first time I've heard of this movie. Now, Christopher Walken would later go on to do other movies just as well. Christopher Stoppes that I mentioned, he would continue his movie and music career as well. One of his projects was, of course, The Highwaymen, which paired him up with Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson.
Yeah. He was also in Pat Garrett and the Billy the Kid.
Yeah, nice. And let's not, as I mentioned before, he was the guy who wrote Me and Bobby McGee for Janis Joplin there for her record Pearl, I believe it was called.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, man. So, gosh, here's one thing how many, what, there's so, what's, we should probably compile a list of all the biggest box office bombs out there sometime soon. We should probably
Yeah.
talk about the worst of the movies, like bomber movies, like for instance, we have Heaven's Gate, Battlefield Earth. There were some movies. We had Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. That did not do so well when it came out in 1984.
Yeah, that would be interesting, I think.
Plan 9 from Outer Space, and this one movie which I know you recommended me checking out, Manitou with what's the name? Was it Robert Mitchum? I think it was his name was
No, Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis. Dang, that's right. And I know we plan on possibly planning on doing that movie next week there.
Yeah, and it also had, I believe, Susan Sarandon in it.
Oh wow, that is something there. And of course, a couple years later, and this came out in 1980 just as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
And that was one weird movie.
yeah. So weird that the audience couldn't make any sense of that as well.
Right.
Hey, what's up, Fast Love? How you doing, man? He said, "What up, Doctor Earl?" So I was thinking about what do you think about this? What the what do you think Michael Cimino is doing right now?
Probably trying to recut and recut Heaven's Gate. No, I
Probably
have
that.
no idea what he's
I have
doing.
no, and because we have not heard or seen this director since that movie.
No, he hadn't done anything that I know of.
And I guess it would. I guess here's the thing in Hollywood, and I remember hearing about this on one of those HBO specials. There, when the director directs a movie and the movie gets becomes a big hit, that's when his name is established. That makes him more accessible to directing more movies in hopes to make it as successful than the first one that he already directed. And
Right.
I guess the movie studio is about the same as a record label. If you release an album and you don't sell any copies, you get dropped.
Right.
And I guess Cimino, because the financial failure of Heaven's Gate, he probably got dropped as the director as well, because a lot of people remembered all his name and what his concept was, and seeing how sucky that it was, and they decided, we're not going to work with Michael Cimino because he was a failure at what he did.
Even though Deer Hunter wasn't.
Yeah, but you know how some record companies and movie studios are. They have this idea of if you fail one time, you're gone. We don't tolerate
Yeah.
failure. That's how they look at it.
Essentially, what have you done for me lately?
Yep, exactly. And here's another example. Metallica's Saint Anger. That record came out in 2003. It was supposed to be part of the new metal scene, minus guitar solo. Snare drums sounded like crap. But the thing was, the album didn't do so well. So apparently, Elektra Records, their original record label, decided, let's probably let go of Metallica because this album bombed so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty typical at that time.
It is, yeah, and it's probably still typical today.
And even more today, I guess.
Yeah, because for instance, look at Kid Rock as well. His last studio
Right.
record was an album called First Kiss, and that was released on a different record label. I guess the album record label that he was on before decided to part ways with him when one of his records prior to First Kiss tanked miserably, I guess.
Right.
So, if you're going to make it big, folks, you're going to have to really work hard on it because, there's all that batch of sharks waiting for you to feast on your meat and your blood. That's for sure there.
Yeah. You got to do it right every time.
That's right. And it sucks, sad but true, believe it or not. Gosh, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so, where do we go from here? I guess it was a bad movie. It was
Well, I guess essentially, yeah, I guess that's pretty much all we can say about it. It was a bad movie and didn't deserve to even be made.
yeah, I know. It's just but
Uh,
and I wonder what Jeff Bridges, Sam
is it-
Waterston, and of course, Chris Christopherson was thinking at that time. Like, geez, I put my all into this movie, and this is a reception we're going to get.
yeah, and keep in mind, a lot of times the actors don't get to see the movie as it's going or the concept or what's going on. They just do what they're told to do.
Yeah, it's true
And
there.
they have no idea how it's all being put together and what's being produced.
Yeah, it's
They
true.
just do their bit and go.
Yeah, I know
So for
exactly.
all they know, it's going to turn out great.
Yeah, and for example, Ian McDiarmid, who played the Emperor in the Star Wars saga. When he was first brought in as the official emperor for Episode 6, they introduced him, they brought in Sebastian Shaw to be the original Anakin Skywalker. And I guess, what's she doing here, Ian? Because apparently those two are buddies. And they said,
Right.
something about, wow, what are you doing here, Ian? I saw something about science fiction, I guess. They don't really know him, but yet at the same time, they're asked to perform these lines here, and that's about it. And the difference is, the lines that Ian McDermott did worked
Right.
and still work to this very day when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I guess we better let folks know that tomorrow night we're going to do the Yardbirds.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Wednesday we're going to do, what did we say, Alfred Hitchcock?
Yes, we were. We were going to do Alfred Hitchcock Presents, one of the mini anthology series that's been out there since The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone.
There's a lot of material on that one.
Yeah.
Thursday, nothing.
Yep.
And Friday, we're going to take a final look at the British invasion
Yep.
and kind of wrap that up. And then next week, we'll move into the American side of the 60s.
Yeah. And there were a lot of 60s bands out there that deserve to be recognized as well because throughout the 60s it was mostly British, British, British.
Although there were their share of American bands that did well.
Yeah, that's true as well. Well, there's this one Canadian band that did well, as we know as the Guess Who, that's for sure.
Of course, they didn't come out till the late 60s, almost
Yeah,
70s.
yeah, it's true there. Now, if JB's still listening to the show, feel free to call in, dude. We'd like to hear from you, man. See how you think how things are going here and there. That we do accept calls on this program here.
The only thing we ask is kind of stay with the subject a little bit, if you would.
Or if you
Or,
want, or if you got a new subject to talk about, we'll definitely dig into that.
oh yeah, especially when we're nearing the end of the particular episode,
Yeah,
which actually we are right now.
yeah. When you think about it, there, we'll get about probably a couple more seconds, and then if not, we'll just end the show here as is, man. And one of these days, what I'm gonna have to do from now on is just before I read any storyline from a movie or that TV episode, I'm going to do it way before we go on air because too many times I've been fumbling with the words here and there, and it's getting to the point where it's driving me fucking nuts. And I'm getting sick of it, man. So what I'm going to do is, probably an hour when I get off of work before when I set up things here, I'm going to read a few lines and bits from the Wikipedia, and there's many articles behind this movie there, so I can get the words out correctly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I sound like because whenever I do that, I feel like a total idiot. And
Well, no, it's you're reading it news, so
Yeah, it's true. So when you're reading it new, so what I need to do is read it a couple times before we go on the air there and learn to pronounce some of these names and these words. That's one of my biggest issues there that still gotta take care of.
yeah.
And again, my apologies to everybody out there wondering, come on, Earl, can't you pronounce that word that well? Well, that's the first time we heard the word. So that's probably the reason why. So once again, tomorrow night we'll be discussing the Yardbirds and the three great guitar players that would emerge from that 60s group there. And the night after that, will, of course, will be Thanksgiving Eve, and we'll be taking a look at Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, both his presents, that's a half hour, and the Alfred Hitchcock hour, because he did 3 years,
Yep.
years of hour shows.
That's right, yeah. And I guess this will be it for tonight. Once again, we take a look at the the ultimate bomb, Heaven's Gate, and the hell that it got when it came out in theaters.
Right.
And that's pretty much the sum of the movie, I guess you could say, the sum of the show.
Yeah.
All right, so once again, on behalf of myself and Arknolia, this is Arknolia and the Doctor, our Movie Madness series. We'll see you at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for our Music Memory series, The Yardbirds, we'll be taking a look at. All right?
All right.
Everybody have a good time, okay? And have a great week.
All right. And we'll see y'all tomorrow night.
Yep.
All right.